to the CFB Super Show Q&A edition, Saturday morning, 1 hour before lock. I'm your host, Walter Waddell. Of course, Dub Deuces 85 is with you on this navigational journey. We're ready. We're ready to do it. We're getting back on track. It's been a solid week. Week 6, the 2-game slate on Thursday, it went well. The 4-game slate on Friday, it went well. We took a bagel from Eric McAllister yesterday and still were able to cash. Gives us confidence. Let's go. The last 2 main slates have been a little choppy, a little sporadic, but you know what? We're feeling good. Lots of stuff happening here. A pretty good handle on our core and our player pool, and we've got a ton of news to parse through. So we're going to do that. We're going to treat this one with a fine, tooth and comb, and we're gonna read this news and we're gonna figure it out together, and we're not gonna get ropatied. Some chat or talk in our Discord about this Penn State nonsense and not getting ropatied like last week. And let me tell you, yes, that sucked, but I don't think this is the same situation because Singleton and Allen are playing, or Allen's playing regardless, right? I don't want to get ahead of myself, though. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you drop them in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button, as they say. If you're watching over on the Twitter machine, aka X, make sure you like and share, retweet the show there as well. There's a chat box to the right if you're watching on Twitter. It is all in one spot on my screen, so you can chat there, post anything, and I will respond live in real time. Yes, we will. A little tired this morning. I tried to do the whole overnight, no sleep thing. As I get older and approach 40, it's a little bit more difficult for me. It was only 3 years ago when I could do it with no problems. Now I'm feeling a little bit lethargic, but I'm still excited and feeling great for this week 6 fun times. Yes, Tony, any best bets in this game or totals? Absolutely. I have 2 that were in the free article earlier this week. One being Clemson minus 14.5. They're minus 15 now against Florida State. DJ Ua on the bench. Don't want to play against his former team. Probably a good idea. Just 2 teams going in opposite directions, right? FSU's season is over. They just need to play their younger guys at this point. Clemson is a threat to make the CFB playoff for the first time in, 3 years? I think they're going to curb stomp FSU. Could be a letdown spot, and I typically like to stay away from spots like that, and I certainly don't like to bet on Clemson very much, but this just seems like too obvious of a spot here, and I've done quite well with obvious spots. There's been a couple of lines where just like, what is this about? And we've done really well on them. So I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to go with it. Kansas versus Arizona State total. We got it on FanDuel on Tuesday at 49.5, took the over. Now looking at 50.5 and 51, depending on which book you're looking at / using today. I do like that up to 52. So if you have it, over 50.5, go ahead and smash that. If your book takes it to 52 before you get to it, I'm still comfortable there. Kansas is in, high-scoring games all the time. Defensively, they're looking more like the, Kansas of the COVID era or pre-COVID era. And ASU is involved in high-scoring affairs all the time as well. ASU's only hit the total once this season in their projected totals. However, the current total of 50.5, their games have gone over that in every single game. So I'm much less worried about them missing their totals in prior games and much more excited about the fact that this particular total they have hit. Also, Cam Ward, 300-plus passing yards. It's just a mortal lock. He has been hitting that mark each and every week. Did a spot on Sirius XM yesterday with my friend Chris Meany, and I talked up Cam Ward the entire time. So those are the 3 main bets. Also, Garrett Green, 60-plus rushing yards over on DraftKings, was plus 115. DVP, baby. Yeah, we love DVP. And Tawi Walker was over 67.5 rushing yards over on Caesars. DK and FanDuel pulled that line off once the news that Chez Mellusi was leaving the program. They didn't want any part of that, but you can still get it over on Caesars for a decent mark. All right. So we're going to get into the news here. We've got a lot of news dumping to do. Okay, so first off, we have the quarterback controversy from Coach Elko, Connor Wegman, and Marcel Reed. Now, everybody wants Reed to play. Elko is committed to Connor based on conversations he had earlier today and some of the Texas A&M beats. The word on the streets is that Connor is going to start. Effectively removes Marcel Reed from main team consideration, and it's probably going to be the all-time worst situation, which is both quarterbacks playing. We know these two quarterback systems, they have a record of not working out very well. So at this point, you can remove Reed from your main lineup. Connor is going to start, it sounds like. Next up, we have a very important situation here between Penn State and UCLA. The Bruins, the mighty Bruins, what once was, 2 or 3 nights ago, Nick Singleton was not at practice. It became a massive panic, like, hey, what's going on? Why isn't he there? Coach Franklin didn't offer a whole lot of, reasons why. Said it's going to be fine. He doesn't anticipate Singleton missing. However, he goes from questionable after those comments to probable yesterday, but we wake up today, or some of us who didn't really sleep at all, me, and Singleton is the only player for Penn State on the questionable portion of the injury report. Now, I warned you on Thursday, we needed to be prepared for this because even though it seems like Singleton's going to play, we know some tomfoolery and shenanigans are going to be abound, and that's what's happening here with Nick Singleton popping up questionable on the report. Now, it's important to note that Singleton is warming up. He is warming up and dressed, but as our guy Preston in Discord alluded to, he doesn't want this to be another BYU situation where all the beats, the graphics, the announcers, everybody says Mr. Ropati is going to start for BYU, which meant he's not going to take a single snap. I'm not too worried about that here because we're not going to play Nick Singleton. At least I'm not. If you guys want to play him, cool. I mean, I have some Singleton, I think, in Battle Royale, but he's 7'3". There's the chance that he's banged up. How much do they actually need him? If there's anything at all here that's physical or injury related to Singleton, they simply don't need to risk it. UCLA has horrific defense. Garbers is not 100%. They're playing a backup quarterback most likely. The running game is stuck in the mud. The receivers can't do anything. Like UCLA is not going to have a lot of success here. Penn State does not need Nicky Singleton in order to win this game. What we're looking at here is Kaytron Allen, K to the second power, Kaytron Allen, who is a absolute beast. Now, we know these running backs are fantastic. They are really, really good together as a duo, probably one of the best, if not the best duos in all of college football. And they're definitely in viable, DFS territory, even when they're both playing. Singleton, maybe not so much at 7'3", but Allen at 5'8", certainly. But if you remove one of them from the equation, you simply have a elite situation. Great matchup, 25 plus touches potentially for Kaytron Allen if Singleton is out, and he's only priced at 5'8", which is near, a few hundred more than Tyree Walker. Got Damon Claiborne in that range. There's a couple of other more popular options. Right now, Kay Allen is getting about 4.89% of the ownership right now, just without any inkling of which way it's going to happen. Now, I'm going to keep checking as I talk here so I don't miss it, but I'm not feeling like Singleton is we're going to get a definitive answer like, hey, he's not going to go. What I think is going to happen is he's going to actually go into the game with the idea that he's going to play, which means people aren't going to roster him or Allen. And then he's going to play the first couple of drives. Maybe he's a little ginger if it's injury related. And they realize real quick that, hey, we're going to smoke UCLA. They traveled cross country. We don't need to risk Nicky. We don't need him to get hurt. We're going to need him for the future games, the more important games, the more competitive games. Why don't we just go ahead and play Kaytron Allen and give him, 25 carries. Dub Deuce has made the call, and we're going to go ahead and oblige him and the DFS community, especially the community at FTN. So my move here is to play Kaytron Allen, I think, in hopes that Singleton is Limited, not out, but limited. That's the best case scenario because that keeps Allen below 10%. Now, in the next 46 minutes before a lock, we get a definitive answer one way or another that Singleton's out, then, that's too much time. The masses are going to run to roster Katron Allen. It's going to mess everything up. Now, it might lower the rostership on Tawi Walker, who we love. Claiborne's already projecting under like 15%, which is Jake's guy this week. So maybe it just kind of muddies the waters a little bit, but he's going to shoot up the board and start pushing towards 20%, which we already had to experience that with Walker. Like I said, I honestly, believe me or not, I had Walker as a sneak heading into the show on Thursday, and then we get the news that Malusi's gone. Similar situation here with Katron Allen. So we want Singleton to be dressed and good, but the best case scenario here is we roster Allen. The game starts. Allen takes the first drive. Allen takes the second drive. Allen takes the third drive. And suddenly Nick Singleton has been ropatied, but we're on the right side of that ropati. We're gonna normalize that term. Sorry, Mr. Ropati. Your name is gonna now forever be linked with being ropatied. We're gonna be on the sounds like what I tell my 2-year-old. Time to get on the ropati. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking here. Now, if Singleton's good to go, you don't want to risk it. The move here probably is to just play Micah Ford, who's cheap. Play Colin Lacey, who's obviously uber chalk. You have some other cheap options such as Noah Thomas, Corey Barney, one of my guys, maybe the Barber, Jabre Barber, whose snaps continue to go up. You have some value that you can use here. You can fit Hampton. You can fit Milrow. You can fit Margai, Garrett Green. You can make some things happen. So you don't have to risk it there. You have the value with Micah Ford, and Ford's ownership has been moving up over the last 36 hours. So it's not like he's a sneak play. You also have Lewis Bond at 4.5, who has been absolutely going nuts during practice this week. Casti has been very sharp, hitting him on deep balls, and I think they're going to make Virginia's life miserable today. So Lewis Bond, certainly a player that I think we need to be higher exposed to than I was talking on Thursday. All right, rest of the news dump. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're playing with the Penn State situation. For Purdue, sounds like Jamal Edreen could start. That's Purdue's presumed number 1 receiver. Not particularly exciting as it is Purdue. And this is not like Aiden O'Connell Purdue. Grayson McCall spotted going through warm-ups. I'm not sure what that's about. We expect CJ Bailey to start. He's been listed as the starter. Let's go in here and do some investigation. Let's put on our investigator hat and see what this is all about. Just warming up, I would expect. Oh, okay. So NC State quarterback Grayson McCall has been upgraded to a game time decision going through initial warm-ups. So Bailey goes from definitely starting to game time to now possibly not starting, and a game time decision on Grayson McCall. Now, that doesn't affect what's going on here. That doesn't affect us too bad because we're not really on Bailey in Maine. Now, he's getting about 21% of the ownership, but we're really like all over green, right? We're not going to play around. We're just playing green. And then Jake sold us pretty hard on Milrow. So at this point, if we're going 2 quarterbacks, it's got to be Green and Milrow or Green and Holstein or Green and Criswell. I'm not really trying to fool around with Bailey too much personally. It's a good matchup, but there's just too much there. And the dreaded 2 quarterback system could be rolled out with McCall and Bailey playing. News out of Virginia: Trell Harris, knee issue, and Chris Tyree, formerly of Notre Dame fame, are both out today. Not dressed for warm-up. Means freshman Cam Courtney will start in the slot. J.R. Wilson, returning from injury, will step into the Harris role. And Malachi Fields, let me make sure this is on. Malachi Fields to the absolute stratosphere. He's going to get 20-plus targets today. He's going to have a Trey Harris-like game. He's very expensive, though, and we just aren't going to be able to fit him, I don't think, unless we consider and entertain the possibility of fading one of Jalen Milroe and one of Omarion Hampton. Now, I'm not fading Hampton because if you fade Hampton, I think you've got – no, I don't think I know. You've got to play Criswell and his pass catchers, Jones and Nesbitt, possibly even Copenhagen. You just can't fool around with not having exposure to that game. So at this point, you've got to decide if you're going to fade Milroe to try and get Malachi Fields in there. They did a really nice job getting him priced appropriately to make you think. Now, let's take a look at the freshmen. It's been the year of the freshmen. You guys heard me talk about that extensively on Thursday. Freshmen have been going nuts. Now, Cam Courtney is min price on both sites over here on DraftKings, especially. $3K for Cam Courtney. Matchup against BC is neutral for the most part, but out of the slot should get plenty of targets, lots of work. We'll see how that shakes out. Lots of news here. Lots of news. So that's going on with Virginia. Let's see the other news that I've got going on here. Eugene Wilson of Florida, a game time decision. He's sub 5K on FanDuel for that game later today. Not a big Eugene Wilson guy, but that price for him over on FanDuel if he plays is intriguing. Let's see here. Damn, there's a lot of news today. Damn, there's a lot of news here today. All right, we already know Hammond is available. We already talked about that. Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders for South Carolina upgraded to probable. We know that. No Robbie Ashford and his extreme running inability to throw the football whatsoever. All right, so let's put the news on ice for right now. Let's just check here. And then we're going to get into some ownership. Penn State wide receiver, punt returner Caden Sanders has a boot on his left foot. Not dressed. That was news that came out earlier. Not super relevant, but another weapon / option for Penn State that is on ice. Now Grayson McCall upgraded to expected to start. So CJ Bailey. I don't know if there's any set it and forget it lineups that played Bailey, but that's going to be bad now because Grayson McCall is now set to start, apparently. Cassidy warming up normally. Northern Illinois, several players out. Trayvon Rudolph and Ontario Brown questionable. If you were planning to bet NIU in their game against UMass, be aware of that. Justin Martin will start for UCLA, so Garber is not going to be able to play. So now you've got UCLA in a backup quarterback situation. It's going to get ugly. Ugly. They don't need Nicky Singleton. They don't need him. I'm putting the call in right now to play Katron Allen 1,000,000 snaps. Ole Miss running back Henry Parrish, game time decision versus South Carolina. I expect him to play. He's been playing hurt like for weeks now. We're not using him, but just something to know. Let's see. Widespread skepticism about Eugene Wilson playing, but still listed as game time decision nonetheless. What are the Gators doing? Some showmanship here, trying to save their job. Whatever, man. Whatever. All right. I think that's in the news. So let's go over here and do our next part. We are approximately 36 minutes from lock. So we're getting there. We're working our way to the promised land. Wow. The last 3.5 minutes have gone from Grayson McCall warming up, Grayson McCall game time decision, Grayson McCall expected to start, to Grayson McCall now starting versus Wake Forest. So there you go. There you have it. Grayson McCall will start. No need to play Bailey. No need to play Carson Daly. No reason to play Grayson McCall either. I just have a bad feeling that they're both going to end up playing, and it's not a good situation, and it's probably a downgrade to everyone. I saw Kevin Concepcion getting some ownership today because of his slightly depressed price, but that NC State situation is now getting very, very murky. All right, let's get into ownership here. So instead of going by position, I'm gonna go like 8 lines down, so you have a sense of like the supreme chalk. This will be no surprise to you. Colin Lacey, have him just over 51%. Probably will be higher than that, single entry and high dollar. Omarion Hampton, 42.1%. Garrett Green, 30%. Tawi Walker, right around 31%. Bayshell Tootin, which is a surprise to me, at 27%. Tootin, I thought it was going to shape up to be like Devin Neal a couple of weeks ago, priced up. There's all these other guys priced. It's not a great matchup. I just didn't think people would be on him, but it does look like Tootin's going to be one of the more popular players, which does kind of make me backtrack a little bit on him, because I'm fine with him in a bad matchup if we're getting him at sub 5% again, or sub 10%, I should say, like we've been getting. But as semi-chalk, I'm not as interested there. I do have like 75% Tootin on Battle Royale this week, though. So Trey Harris, 28%. Then we had CJ Bailey pulling 25. That's going to go down. Again, there might be some set it and forget it lineups that die a painful, slow death if they don't take him out. Jalen Milroe at 22%. KC, 21. Noah Thompson, 19. Lewis Bond, 19. And then we have Brennan Presley, Tyler Shuck, and Will Pauling rounding out the options that are all projecting over 15%. So again, Colin Lacey, Omarion Hampton, Garrett Green, all guys that we're very high on, popular across the industry. My man, Tawi Walker. So we're going to be pretty chalky this week. Milroe's probably going to see a little bit more than that 20% as well because of all this value. I think people will just kind of get there and say, oh, I can't use Marcel Reed now. Can't use CJ Bailey now. Where do I go here? I think Milroe naturally is that choice. Makes Holstein pretty interesting because I think him and Criswell are going to go way, way under-owned compared to what he should be. And then Tootin, Harris, Noah Thomas, Lewis Bond, those are all guys that I expect to see in your opponent's single entry cash games, high dollar lineups. Some opportunities here for direct leverage from a Noah Thomas. Jabre Barber, who's I've been harping on him since, a week or two ago, min price on Texas A&M. His snaps are going up. He's pretty much secured himself as the WR2 now. The targets and the catches weren't there like they were for Thomas last week, but the snaps were. He played 5 less snaps, but he played 3+ snaps more than any other player in the receiver room. So I like Barber a lot. Ja'Cory Barney for Nebraska, who had a rushing touchdown last week. They're using him in a myriad of ways. True freshman coming up with Dylan Raiola. They have an affinity for each other, great chemistry. I think Nebraska has themselves a pretty nice game. I do think Rutgers does a nice job semi-containing the running game of Nebraska, and I think they're going to have to do some exotic things, and I think that's where Barney comes into play, and we saw a preview of that last week, but I think they go full bore with Barney. So 3-4 on DraftKings. He's a nice, solid bet for value. Copenhaver for North Carolina, the tight end too, but there's lots of targets to be had today. He's $3K min price, so another cheapie that you can use there. Just some leverage pieces to get away from some of the more chalkier values such as Lacey, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend fading. Noah Thomas, which I don't know. If Thomas going to get peppered with 12+ targets today? He might, but I find that a little bit hard to believe, honestly. Will Pauling is cheap in a bounce back situation, so you have him there as well. I am seeing some Isaac Brown hype from certain areas of the internet. Eli Stowers, nice tight end option. And then one more cheapie here that was getting kicked around a bit. Taylor Morin, who I mentioned was my favorite Wake Forest option, even more than Claiborne. I think he's a nice look, sub 5K, highest target share on the team, very consistent. I think he's a lot safer than you probably realize. And then right now, the collective aggregate ownership on Micah Ford is about 9%. I think that's wrong. I think he's going to be closer to 20. So we're still in progress here with projections and ownership. For what it's worth, I have him at 10.62 fantasy points, which is pretty good at 4-1. All right, so that's ownership. There's some strategy talk. Nikki Singleton, as of 3 minutes ago, full participant in pregame warmups. Sorry, got to get the charger out here. Now in his uniform. So Nikki's going to play. And like I said, that's kind of the best case scenario for us, right? Is that he's in his uniform, going to give it a shot. They realize real quick that they don't need him against UCLA and K-Tron. Like, this is one of those spots because I'm a much riskier player than most in single entry. I know a lot of people won't take those risks in single entry or even cash games. But I'm certain I'm comfortable enough. If you are not risk averse, I am comfortable enough playing K-Tron Allen in Maine anyways. Even with the news that Singleton is in uniform and going through full warmups. It's of course safer to go like Micah Ford. And I really like the Ohio State receivers today as kind of lower owned, high upside plays. Iowa has been getting blitzed by at least one receiver in 3 of their 4 games. Daniel Jackson had over 100 yards. Devontae Ross from Troy had over 100 yards. Jalen Noel of Iowa State. And they all play similar position and style to Emeka Egbuka. So I do think Egbuka is the one that beats on Iowa today. I think they do a better job shutting down Jeremiah Smith. You can make a pretty nice lineup with our core group of players with Micah Ford in that flex and Egbuka as your third receiver. There's a build out there that feels pretty good with that. All right, Holstein trade. We'll get into some this or that questions and fill our time for the next 10 minutes while we wait for some more definitive answers. But we're just under a half an hour to lock, so ask away. This is your time, my friends. Holstein, Trey Harris, Jabray Barber. Shout out to the Barber. Or Tyler Shuck, Bayshell Tootin, Ja'Cory Brooks. So the upside is massive for the first trio. Holstein and Harris especially, and Barber I think is going to break out at any time. You're getting a safer floor with the Shuck group, but I will say Holstein. Holstein and that group feels pretty darn good. All right. Ja'Cory Barney versus Jabray Barber. Putting me to the test, huh? I lean Barney there. I'm as much as I like Barber, like I'm just like super into Ja'Cory Barney. I think he's just going to be an absolute stud next year, and that continues on this season, and we see those flashes. Carlito's Way, good movie, man. Real good movie. If you're from the 90s like me, real good movie. The answer to that question is yes. Absolutely love Malachi Fields. I have a bajillion shares of him on Underdog Battle Royale. I want him. I'd love to use him considering the fact that Virginia's down 2 of their primary receivers now. But God, DK did such a nice job pricing him up. Like I am fairly impressed with the way that DK was able to price. There's a few spots where they missed the bus, right? Like with Lacey and stuff, but 8.6K for Fields. Like you're just not getting Fields, Harris, or Luther Burden in there with Hampton, Green, and Milrow. You're going to have to sacrifice one of those guys. And for me right now, line in the sand, I'm just not fading Hampton or Green. I know they're going to be chalky, but as I say every week, I'm a simple man. I like my DVP and mobile quarterbacks and just running players, players with an affinity to run the football, just torture Oklahoma State. And last week we got a little cute and hadn't had as much exposure to Giddens and Avery Johnson as we should have, despite talking them up. And I was kicking myself the entire day. I'm just simply not doing that again. Now, there is a GPP lineup out there. If you want to fade Garrett Green, you got to play one of CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White. I don't think you can run a single lineup today on DraftKings that doesn't include one of White, Donaldson, or Green. I think you're doing yourself a serious disservice if you do. And I don't think you're going to wind up with the optimal if you do. So we'll let that be a lesson to you. But yeah, you're going to have to fade one of Hampton or Milroe to fit Fields. Trey Harris is much more popular even at his price. So maybe some people swap off Harris and bring his ownership down to Fields. But as of right now, Fields ownership, gosh, it's minuscule. Let's see here. I'm going to have to do a better job on my sheet being able to sort it. Right now, it's all a mess. Like Luther Burden, 3.4%. Like, hell yeah. I would love some Burden there. Again, I'm not going to be able to get there. Fields sub 5% as well. So there's some real nice leverage opportunities with some of these high-priced receivers because the masses are all going Trey Harris because of the fact that he gets all of the targets there for Ole Miss. But I think there is a path for him and that chalk to fail going up against a really tough defense in South Carolina that's going to probably scheme to try and remove him from the equation. So that's a long-winded answer for me to say, yes, not only do I like Malachi Fields, but I love Malachi Fields. I have him all over Best Ball, all over Battle Royale. Would love to play him on DraftKings and FanDuel, but unfortunately, I just don't have that salary to make it happen. All right, what do we got? Is he cash valuable? Talking about Grayson McCall. Somehow I knew that I wasn't going to get out of here without having to answer that question. 5.5K. All right. Cheap enough at 5.5. Looming risk that Bailey is there to play as well. McCall takes a shot. Something doesn't, gets re-aggravated. Ineffective. Like, there's just way too much downside there. I don't think we're getting enough bang for our buck. And because of the fact that there's like two or three, well, actually there's 4 elite quarterbacks today on DraftKings. Green, obviously, Milroe, obviously, and then you have Criswell, who I think is going to, turn some heads today, and Eli Holstein. So if you take McCall and he gets yanked or he gets re-injured or just ineffective, I just don't think you're even going to pull him in cash because the other 4 quarterbacks there that we've highlighted are just going to put up such a big score that you're not going to be able to make it up anywhere else because you're going to have overlap with Hampton in that lineup. You're going to have overlap with Lacey in that lineup. You probably have Walker. Like, you're just putting yourself at a severe disadvantage. Even if, going McCall gets you Malachi Fields or Luther Burden, you're still going to have Luther Burden outscore Trey Harris. And there's too much downside. So I know that's probably not the answer that you wanted, and I can confirm that's not the answer you wanted because you dropped an F-bomb after. Not at me directly, just because I think you wanted to play him due to his cheap price. Let's pull up FanDuel. Milroe 13.5. Jake answered this question on Thursday, but in case you missed the show, one of the call-outs was, Jalen Milroe, got to play him no matter what. We're arrived at Jalen Hurts, Oklahoma territory. We've arrived at Justin Fields, Ohio State territory. You may recall a few years back, you couldn't fade those guys. They were expensive. If you did fade them, you hoped that by halftime they didn't have 30-plus fantasy points. If they did, you lost. If they didn't, you had a chance. We may be there with Milroe now. He's 13.5K on FanDuel. Looking through the quarterbacks, Green's 10-2. Like, I'm with it. I'm with it there. Holstein, 11K. Rocco Becht is interesting at 9-2 against Baylor. That's on the later slate for DK. KJ Jefferson against Florida. So you don't have to play him there. But again, with him in the Heisman race, even if it turns into a blowout against Vanderbilt, I think they let him still get his numbers. And Vanderbilt's played well enough to maybe this game stays within 3 touchdowns till the very end. And if that's the case, Milroe throws for 300 plus. Milroe rushes for 100 plus. Milroe scores or is a part of 5 different touchdowns, and not having him is going to be very, very difficult. Holstein or Criswell? So Holstein is a main team look there. Criswell, I'm only really playing him in stacks, and that's stacks with at least 2 of Bryson Nesbitt, John Koppenhaver, or JJ Jones. Right now, Criswell, Jones, and Nesbitt is a stack that I have a decent chunk of, with some mixed in Koppenhaver. But yeah, Holstein is the main look. You can play him with Desmond Reed if you want to, who's not going to be very highly owned. It's actually Reed who's going to be the toot and play this week as far as ownership. And you can pair him up, Holstein, with Mumfield if you want to, but it's not a necessity. All right, we are 19 minutes from lock. Keep throwing those questions out. I'm going to go over to Twitter to check what you guys got for me there. Man, Grayson McCall is picking up some steam. He just hasn't looked right. He's got the weapons. Hopefully this means Kevin KC will have a game, but man, he just hasn't looked right. But Wake Forest, the matchup is right, so maybe it works out. As someone who typically plays only one quarterback, I wouldn't waste that spot on Grayson McCall myself. We have so much other value around the different positions. And ironically enough, I haven't ran a 1 quarterback lineup in the past 2 weeks on any slate. It's either been 4 receivers, 4 running backs, or even 5 receivers in some cases. So we'll reopen the house of 4 running backs soon, but we're not going to be open for business today. Which is funny because I just got a question about that, which I just answered. But yeah, 2 QBs today. All right, let's throw some PrizePicks plays out here. I don't know if these are updated, but I just want to go through these because I'm getting some PrizePicks questions on Twitter. We had Tyree Walker over 65.5 rushing yards on PrizePicks. Rocket Sanders, who is now playing, over 55.5 rushing yards, just gets high volume. Garrett Green over 290.5 passing plus rushing yards. And then over on Underdog, we like the Cam Scatterbo over 117.5 rushing plus receiving yards. And my man, Ja'Cory Barney, over 21.5 receiving yards. The Barney game today, Barney or Barber, one of those two is going to absolutely break it. And possibly, not even possibly, will. This is my own version of the slate breakers that Jake normally handles, but one of Barber or Ja'Cory Barney is going to outscore Chalk Lacey today. You heard it here first. Weather in Chapel Hill, hot and balmy. It's going to be a fun game. That one's going to be a slobber knocker in a way that lots of fantasy points are scored. And it surprises me that the ownership is only really coming in on Hampton and almost no one else. Really, really surprising. All right, we're going to circle back around and check news. Double stack viable with Tyler Shuck lineups. Yes. Ja'Cory Brooks and Colin Lacey. You could go Bell there, but yes, Brooks, Shuck, and Lacey is viable. All these ACC games are pretty tasty, honestly. Like BC, Virginia, I could see going over. Wake Forest, NC State, I could see going over. Louisville, SMU. We already know Pittsburgh and North Carolina is going to be high scoring. Like, there's a lot of good spots here in these ACC games. All right. So we're going to just about wrap up here. I'm just going to do one quick walk back on the news just to see where we stand. Well, there you have it. After this just dropped like 30 seconds ago, after being listed as questionable for today's clash with UCLA, Penn State football will put Nicholas Singleton in their starting lineup. He will get the first carries. There you have it. Nicky Singleton getting the start over Kaytron Allen. So with that being said, probably hard to play Allen in your main. It is possible. It is doable, but he does lose some luster here. Again, if you're a little more risky than the normal person, you could still play Allen. I think they both go for 100+ yards for what it's worth if they're both playing normally, but Underdog canceling Battle Royale drafts is the most annoying thing of the week, by the way. I don't know if you guys play Battle Royale, but annoying. All right, so Nick Singleton starting takes some luster away from that one. Probably the right move is to move over to Micah Ford and somebody like Emeka Egbuka or a receiver in that range. But it is worth noting that Kaytron Allen is a co-starter with Singleton. So, I mean, they both start. They both are going to get work. I just don't know why they would play him. I almost wonder if it's showmanship. I'm still, man, this is tough. Yeah, that one hurts me. All right, that I think we're good there. We're about 13 minutes from lock. Just checking last minute news stuff, anything that's relevant for us, but that appears to be all. Feel pretty damn good about this slate, betting wise, props wise, DFS. I think we're gonna have ourselves a really good day. A ton of great matchups, even though there aren't a ton of ranked matchups. That's been the big story in the media today. Oh, there's not enough ranked matchups. We will get them, but overall, just a lot of football, plenty of games to stream. We'll be hanging out in the FTN CFB Discord pretty much all day, tilting and talking strategy. So if you're a member of FTN, make sure you get over there to check in on things. If you haven't signed up with FTN yet, certainly consider do so. We have an amazing amount of tools, optimizers, projections, articles. The creator of DVOA is with us. We have tons of live shows, tons of podcasts, everything you could possibly utilize, need, or want offered by FTN. Appreciate of all of you guys who continue to support the Super Show and myself. We will be back next Thursday, 9 p.m. PST, breaking down the main slate. The nice thing is, after this week, there will no longer be big gaps in games. Tuesday through Saturday, each and every week going forward, we will have college football. Then with Sunday and Monday NFL, means you won't have a single day without football for the next few months. Great stuff. We will have coverage in Discord on all of those weekday slates. Big edge there, usually articles for the main slate Saturday, the night slate for Saturday as well. Jake Kuchek will release that, and tons of other content coming your way over the next 12 hours from our NFL guys. Thanks, guys. Take care. Good luck out there. 11 minutes to lock. Let's get those green screen trips, those window shopping trips. Let's get that money. Let's do it. Let's make things happen. Take care, guys. Appreciate you. I'm out.